Thank you and good morning. Our audio and video taping this presentation so that we can prepare a CD for distribution as well as to have it for cable programming. Again, thank you for coming. I would like to say that we have an exciting program. Of course, that would be my take on it regardless. Today's program is titled Economic Development in Action, Shaping a 21st Century Economy. And this program is driven in part by the fact that economic development in the 21st century is substantially different from 10 years ago, the 20th century, really. It has substantially changed. On the one hand, we have fierce global competition. We also have major global markets that have opened up to U.S. businesses and trade. So that's an opportunity. We in the 21st century now, we recognize and embrace regional collaborations. We no longer are islands unto ourselves. Today, economic growth faces such factors as community capacity, existing infrastructures, dwindling natural resources, and the aging of the workforce. Today we must emphasize workforce training, quality of jobs, and market development. The 21st century, businesses as well as industry and economic development organizations are focusing on flexibility, innovation, productivity, and quality, and not just the bottom line. Today we understand that over 80% of the jobs created in an area or a region are through local entrepreneurship and existing businesses. And we now must emphasize and continue to emphasize job retention and expansion from our local businesses rather than chasing smokestacks. We also in the 21st century, or today, we realize the significance of the role of small business as an important engine in economic development. Also, that entrepreneurship and small businesses are the leaders in innovation and technology. Currently, we see in the 21st century that the service-producing industries are now strong engines for economic advancement. 21st century understands that strong economic needs are met through diversified and broad-based economic initiatives. This includes broad-based industries and a mix of agriculture, service sectors, manufacturing, commercial, industrial. Today you will hear about Jefferson County's assets and some initial opportunities. Our representatives from Vanderwall and Associates, Rob Gutschuk and Jolena Priesty, will be talking about the advantages of Jefferson County, our location. They'll discuss the region as well as global trends. We will also hear from Professor Grabo and Bruce Holcomb on the context for which Jefferson County Economic Development Consortium is working on this planning and why this planning fits. We'll hear from Paul Mataraki, who will be talking about why we need an economic development vision. In addition, we'll hear from both Rafael Carbonell and Jim Page on regional collaborations and the efforts that are being done to the east of us and to the west of us, and what that means for our future. All of which will provide a foundation to shape economic vision for Jefferson County. Thank you.
Well, good morning, everybody. I'm Steve Grabo. I'm the Community Development Educator with UW Extension here in Jefferson County. And I'll be talking about some of the context for this County Economic Development Plan process. Looking around the room today, I know that there's been a lot of economic development visioning and planning that's been going on for a long time within our local communities, within our local economic development entities, within our various respective chambers of commerce around the county, our local units of government, and the JCEDC. Also, there's been a lot of work by the State Department of Commerce regarding economic development. This new initiative, which we're talking about today, is building on a lot of that hard work that's currently underway. As the community development educator here in Jefferson County, I've been an advisor to the JCEDC, and I've provided some help in designing this approach for creating an economic development vision for Jefferson County. As a collective group of individual communities, and as a region, and as a county, we will be attempting to reach agreement on a detailed vision of what the economy and our communities should look like in the future. When I refer to vision, I define it as a description of a future end state. For example, what do we want the corporate composition to look like a few years out? Or what should we have in place if we want to be part of the so-called new economy? What does that mean? Or what would the ideal workforce characteristics for our Jefferson County area be in the future? And when I say reach agreement, I mean that there will have been a possibility to learn, to share among people who have knowledge and experience. There will be an opportunity to discuss the pros and cons of alternative vision ideas. And there will be a lot of hard decision-making by lots of people to come up with a rich and meaningful vision of what Jefferson County should aspire towards. In providing a context for this new economic development plan, I'd like to point out that there's been a lot of planning work and studies in Jefferson County and within our communities even over the last 10 years. Probably most of you know that Jefferson County was the first county in Wisconsin to have a completed comprehensive plan that is compliant with the so-called smart growth law. There's also been lots of planning on parks, recreation, tourism, and natural resources. Many of you have been following a big initiative called the Glacial Heritage Area Plan, which could result in a new system of conservation-oriented parks, recreation areas, and bike trail connections. I also know of at least 8 of our jurisdictions that are currently doing local comprehensive plans. Some of these same communities are also doing downtown revitalization and Main Street plans even as we speak. The JCEDC, along with the assistance of the Department of Commerce, the State Department of Commerce and Kathy Heddy, did a plan aimed at business retention strategies a couple of years ago. And this has been an important guide for the Board of Directors of the JCEDC and Director Dennis Haling in carrying out the day-to-day operations of the consortium. And finally, a little over a year ago, we had a JCEDC forum right here to look at how our area is performing on overall economic indicators in our service and our retail sectors. But we have not, as a collaboration of communities, worked with an economic development consultant, Vanderwall, to seriously look at how the Jefferson County communities and our businesses are positioned for the future. The Jefferson County Economic Development Consortium is now ready to launch this planning process, and there will be many opportunities to be involved in this process, from just keeping track of the progress over the next 18 months to directly providing some input. The JCEDC and its partners will be looking at many alternative scenarios and will then make decisions and a selection on what the preferred vision for economic development in our area should be. As your community development educator, please feel free to contact me if you have any questions about either the progress of this process or any of the content that's emerging as we move through this process. So I also thank you all for joining us today.
Good morning. My name is Paul Mataraki. I'm the village administrator for Johnson Creek and the chairperson of the JCEDC Board of Directors. And I want to thank you for attending today's gathering. The Economic Development Planning Initiative we are unveiling this morning needs your assistance and participation to point Jefferson County in the right direction for the 21st century. Planning is at its core an optimistic process. The people who gather around the tables to discuss the potential that is their future do so because they want their communities to succeed and they themselves want to be successful. You are invited to attend today because you have a stake in the future of Jefferson County. You are decision makers in Jefferson County. As you know, the best decisions are the results of research, perspective, understanding, and foresight. 5 years ago this month, a group of Jefferson County administrators and managers met for the first time with a group of Jefferson County supervisors to talk about what we were going to do in terms of economic development. We talked about the importance of having an economic development presence in the county and the importance of planning Jefferson County's future, not just letting the future happen to us. This initiative is a result of that meeting and many other meetings and efforts during the intervening years. With Dennis at the helm, the consortium surveyed the county to determine the business climate in the county and then delve deeper to ascertain the strengths and challenges facing our county. Now it is time for us to look outside the county, at the forces emerging around us. What opportunities lie to the east and the west that we might be able to take advantage of? How will we get there? Beyond Milwaukee and Madison, what regional trends are emerging? What strengths do we have that will enable us to be a vibrant player in the emerging markets? What are our schools, K-12, technical, and colleges doing to prepare the next generation workforce for the emerging skills and technologies they will need to compete? What is happening nationally and globally that needs to be considered as we talk about and go about making our plans? What's the competition doing? Where is the competition? What skills is the competition bringing to the table? What are the real effects on Jefferson County of $90 a barrel oil? How will our economy fare as that price doubles? Will our society be able to maintain its customary mobility in face of such costs? How will our employees get to work and to market? What is or can Jefferson County doing to insulate itself from economic distress in the face of ever-increasing energy costs? What can we start doing now while we still have the ability and capacity and flexibility to act, to test and develop alternative strategies that will make ourselves more self-sufficient and less vulnerable to changing market forces? Two of Jefferson County's strengths are agricultural and skill-based manufacturing processes. Both rely on large amounts of energy to be successful. What opportunities are available to make them more sustainable? How can we take advantage of growing markets for organically produced local foods? We're not going to answer all these questions today, but we are going to get some insights. Today we are here to set the stage for a year of county-wide dialogues around such issues. You are all invited to participate. Your communities are invited to participate. We need you to be part of the process so that every perspective is represented and it results in a plan the county can embrace.
I apparently was mulching leaves through a poison ivy patch the other day, so I kind of look like I'm a loser in a boxing match. Land use planning can be a little bit like that, and we spent 5 years going through a process to come to a vision, and our efforts in Jefferson County at that time were to kind of identify these planning areas, where development might occur, where it should best occur. And our efforts were concentrated really on the protection of the agricultural resource. We had kind of 4 general areas: urban service areas, agricultural preservation areas, environmental corridors. And we, with our 4 years of meetings, it really pointed for us to concentrate on the agricultural preservation effort, to protect the ability for the farmers to continue to farm and yet recognize the necessity for their farm equity issues and allow a certain degree of development without having that development infringe on their ability to exercise their farm expansion. So it was quite a challenge in Jefferson County to meet that. So we kind of dealt and concentrated with about 80% of the land, that open space that supports agriculture and supports the environmental resources. Those areas, since those areas were being left to more of the open space and agricultural use, the areas that would accept the high-density residential, industrial, and business were identified basically as urban service areas. And it took many meetings and consensus between cities and towns, sometimes not consensus, but at least coming to some cooperative agreements to identify areas for these communities to expand. And these urban service areas generally identified approximately a 50-year expansion area. And there were some negotiations for some to reduce and expand. There was the conflicts between towns and towns and cities as to, well, we don't want them to go so far, and so they were reduced to a degree. Cities now are in the process of doing their planning efforts, as are some of the towns, because we've got deadline dates to do this comprehensive planning. And so they are going to reflect more on these areas of growth, of these areas of potential growth. And this new effort now, this economic development effort, which is something that we did not have the ability to concentrate on and now have the ability to do so, will really help look at those areas to provide the potential opportunities and strategies for economic development to occur. And I guess the point I just wanted to make that there was a lot of effort. There was like 130 meetings done in order to produce this land use plan and to try to generally identify these areas where agricultural can grow and where business and industry should grow. And we can have both in Jefferson County. You know, we don't need to expand out generally into all areas in order to achieve every individual's vision of what they should do on their individual property. We need to locate these industries and businesses to where the public facilities can best serve them and be most efficient use of those services. And so with that, I guess we will go into the rest of the presentation. And this will also serve as our 10-year update of our plan. So there is a technical plus here in that everywhere in Wisconsin, anytime you do a plan, you're supposed to have an update. And communities really just don't have the time to concentrate on all the areas that a comprehensive plan needs to concentrate on. You concentrate on what's important to you in your community. And then you have to take the time later on to concentrate on these other efforts. And that's what we're going to begin the process over this next 12 to 18 months. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. My name is Rafael Carbonell, and I'm here on behalf of the Regional Economic Development Entity, or REDI. We represent the 8-county capital region. That is Sauk, Columbia, Dodge, Jefferson, Rock, Greene, Iowa, and Dane County. And REDI came out of the initiative which was originally dubbed the Collaboration Council. The Collaboration Council started about 3 years ago and was a table of business, government, education, and nonprofit leaders coming around the table to have a discussion on how are we going to grow this economy in a regional fashion in ways that preserve and enhance quality of life. And that's really important to know that it was not either economic vitality or quality of life, but it was a recognition that we need to have both going forward. So how did this group come together? Really, there were 2 points that kind of got the thing going. One was, you've heard it mentioned earlier, the fact that we're in a global economy. This notion of Madison competing with Jefferson, competing with Baraboo, that's not how we're functioning in today's economy. It truly is our region, this capital region, competing with regions of Austin, San Francisco, Beijing, and Brazil. That's the marketplace, that's the dynamic, so we need to start changing how we approach our focus on growing an economy. The second part was looking at the notion of population growth. There's no longer the question of, are we going to grow? We are. The question was asked, how are we going to grow? So those two dynamics that got a wide variety of people and leaders around that table to say, let's look at how we can grow this economy in ways that preserve and enhance quality of life. And the important part to note was being proactive about it, was not waiting until you have a crisis, till you have to respond to it. These initiatives are very common throughout the country. Often they are born of crisis. So the question was, how do we get ahead of this so that we can be more strategic in our approach, because operating from a position of strength is going to create more opportunities for you. I mentioned the 8-county capital region. The Collaboration Council from Jefferson County, Dennis Healing has been representing Jefferson County at the table, and that's been a really important partnership for us, and I'm going to come back to that in a second. A couple of additional details on the vision. I mentioned economic development and quality of life. We've really focused on how do you create and grow your own companies, the notion of entrepreneurship. What are your key assets that you have that you need to leverage and take advantage of? What are the opportunities that you can be created from understanding those assets? And how can you be strategic and focused in your approach? There are plenty of areas you can focus on. Where are you going to put your effort to start? And we've decided on 3 industry sectors on which we're focusing, and you're going to hear a theme here this morning: agriculture, biotechnology, and healthcare. We looked at what our strengths are, what our assets are in this 8-county region, and there's direct alignment on those 3 sectors. We think those are going to be critical opportunities going forward. And it's important to note, if you take those areas where those sectors overlap, talk agriculture, biotechnology, and healthcare, bioagriculture, and biomedical as well. Those are core competencies that this region has competing on a global marketplace. Again, regional and collaborative, it's got to be a component of that. What are we doing to do that? We've put together a group of regional economic developers, the folks who are on the ground doing this in their day job, and we bring them together on a regular basis to ask, what are some common challenges we're facing, and what are some common opportunities? So this group has come together under the heading of the economic development professionals of the capital region. We've come to a consensus on what is our purpose and some guiding principles that we can use to going about our business. And this may sound a little bit fluffy, but I think it's really important to note, because prior to having an understanding on what is our common goal, what are some common areas of focus, it's going to be pretty difficult to have people aligned with a common vision. So getting that group together, a wide variety of inputs and perspectives, has been really important to move that forward. Jefferson County has been a critical partner in doing that, and Dennis has been at the table and helping lead that forward. So I do want to applaud your efforts as a county and Dennis's efforts and your continued participation and support of Dennis in that participation. It's very important for us going forward. So looking forward, we're looking for those opportunities on where are these common elements of alignment. And you're going to hear from Rob Goshak this morning from Vanderwall & Associates, who we worked with early on, to find out what are your key assets, what are the opportunities that can come from that. You're also going to hear from my counterpart at the Milwaukee 7 right after me. Similar effort. What are your assets? What are your key opportunities? And I think as you start to think of this from a truly global perspective, when we start to get outside of these county borders and these regional borders, we're going to really look at, this is going to be project-based and it's going to be issue-based on how we address and really seize the opportunities going forward. Because for any economic issue, for any quality of life issue, businesses and residents understand that borders are not respected by the economy or by those quality of life issues, whether it's land use, whether it's transportation, whether it's workforce issues. We live, play, and work regionally. So the sooner we can get our arms around that and find alignment for those common opportunities, the more we're going to have to benefit this region as a whole. So I really appreciate the opportunity to give you a quick background on what we're doing. Happy to drill into any more details during a Q&A or afterwards. But again, appreciate the opportunity to speak with you this morning and applaud your efforts here in this area. Thank you.
Very good. Good morning, everybody. My name is Jim Page. I am with the Milwaukee 7. We are the Regional Economic Development Initiative for southeastern Wisconsin. And I've got a couple of slides here. Yeah, that's the one right there, Dennis. Excellent. You see the 7 counties that we're talking about in terms of southeastern Wisconsin. We've been at this for a little over 2 years in terms of regional collaboration. And in those 2 years, we've discovered a lot of things. I mean, and one of the things I think we've discovered is that we got a lot in common. And we have a lot of good reasons to be together. We have a lot of things really to agree on. And you see on the left-hand side there, and this is something that you've heard from some of the earlier remarks, and that is, why did you get together? Well, hey, the global economy told us that we had to, and that's truly the case for the Milwaukee 7 as well. We can disagree all we want within our region, but the global economy is telling us that regional assets are what are going to help you compete in a global economy. Next slide, please. There you go. Our mission, real simple, 7 counties together. And we're interested in doing 2 things. We want to grow the number of companies and the quality of the companies that we have in the region. And number 2, we want to grow our talent base. And we believe those 2 things are very much so reinforcing. And if we can do those 2 things together, we think as a region we're going to be pretty successful. Next slide. When we talk about companies, we've been able to agree really on the type of company that we're interested in. It's what we call a regional income producer. And so this highly complicated slide, I'll boil this down for you into just a couple of key concepts. We are interested in the kind of company that no matter what they do, if they're a manufacturer, if they're a law firm, if they're an IT provider, whatever it is that they do, a fair amount of it gets exported outside our region. So the best way to think about this is these are the kinds of companies that really grow the pie larger. Because what that does is when they export stuff outside the region, that brings back jobs, income, and investment back into our community. So these are the ones that we are focusing on, and it's actually a fairly small subset of the regional economy, and I'll go through that here in just a second. Next slide. A quick snapshot of our economy. $78 billion is the gross metro product. We've got about 50,000 businesses, 1 million jobs. Those 1 million jobs break down really nicely into 3 categories. One is what we call driver jobs, and that's that box you see there on the far left-hand side. These are those jobs that go with those companies that I just mentioned, the regional income producers. These are the folks that have a fair amount of whatever they do, they're exporting it outside the region. After that, we've got about 300,000 of our 1 million jobs in what we call multiplier businesses. These are the companies that, a good example is they supply to the manufacturers that are in that first box. The last box are what we call direct and indirect spending jobs. These are the kinds of jobs that are wholly dependent on having jobs in the first 2 categories. So, having places for people to eat, having places where you can get your dry cleaning done. These are wholly dependent on, do you have population? If you have population and you have people, you'll have health in that particular part of the schematic here. Next slide, please. We took a lot of time and looked at our assets as well, and we got a strong agreement that we've got 8 broad assets, and you see them listed there. I'm not going to go through these all in a lot of detail, but things like talent and having good infrastructure, innovation capacity, our proximity to Chicago and to Madison, all those are assets that we bring to the global economy that are things that we think that we can leverage, and we think that those assets are, we either have them in the same quantity or more quantity than some of our competitors. Next slide. We also agreed that we needed to have a code of conduct. We needed within the region to have a way in which we would deal with one another. So we put on paper here what that code of ethics is. It sort of codifies our beliefs, but also tells the individual actors within the region, here's how we deal with situations. If it's a prospect coming into town, you sell the region first, on down the road, those sorts of things. We got pretty quick agreement on this as well. Next. But what I would suggest to you is that all of these things that I talked about just now are things that was fairly easy for us to get agreement on. And they're conceptual, they're all sort of up here, and so they're fun things to talk about, but they really don't get you economic development. And what gets you economic development is when you decide and when you sort of take the agency that you have and you try to affect change. And so when there are real projects that are out there, and these are projects in which, or policies in which, there could be very reasonable disagreement within the region. That's when you start to see, all right, how collaborative are we going to be here? And for us, there are some very key issues as it relates to the infrastructure of our region. So, for example, water policy is key in southeastern Wisconsin in terms of sort of being in 2 watersheds. Transportation, very important as it relates to not only how are we going to rebuild the infrastructure that we have, but how do we start to address some of the new transportation needs, whether it's public transportation, rail, what have you. These are the kinds of things that regional collaboration gets really tested when you're going to do those sorts of things. Secondly, it gets tested when you're looking for money. Not only money to fund your efforts, but money for specific projects. And so oftentimes where the money sits is defined very specifically by geography. And so, people don't always have the luxury of not being parochial. And so we see that in terms of money and raising it for certain specific initiatives. And then lastly, I think where we really get a lot of success and where you really start to build that regional collaboration is when there are specific projects where you're able to deliver benefits back to a wide number of partners. We recently worked on a specific company project with the Gale Company, which is up in West Bend. That was a project that involved 4 different entities. All 4 were partners within the M7, and all 4 of them could hold that up as a win. That's how regional collaboration starts to really take hold. There's specific examples that somebody can say, hey, this is more than just words on a paper and a plan. This is somebody actually affecting what's going on in our future, and here's how our collaboration was helpful to me and my particular entity. So with that, I will conclude, and I'll hang around for questions after. Thanks.